So, about 5 years ago, my uncle, who does a lot of stuff on eBay, particularly with bass guitars, came across this alto saxophone and asked me if it was something that I would be interested in. I think mainly because of the fact that it's silver, and it was so cheap. It was on for about, I think, between 60 and 70 pounds. It was very kind of, yeah, someone was looking to get rid of it. As you can see, it's got no name on it other than this autograph that you can see, which is Johnny Collar's autograph. Johnny Collar being the saxophone player from Huey Lewis and the News. He was my hero when I was younger. Yeah, so this is a probably 60 to 70 pound saxophone. What I have here is my alto sax, which I use all the time. This is Yanagisawa. Where's the name? There we go, Yanagisawa there. 991 saxophone, which I believe is kind of above £2,000 to get new. It also has a Fred LaBelle custom mouthpiece on it, which I got from sax.co.uk. And what I'm going to do is play the two saxophones and see basically whether I could have saved myself a fortune with this £60 sax versus this more expensive Yanagisawa thing. Come on. It's not having that G. So before I move on to the Yanagisawa, let me show you a few little things that you can look out for if you're buying a saxophone, or things to have a look at on your sax if you kind of want to upgrade. These are personal to me, and kind of you might find other things, or you might like the way that a saxophone feels. But just to look at the left hand first, basically with the palm keys, if I kind of shoot down over here, the D key you can see there, which is here, the D key, that's my hand kind of just in a standard position. There's a lot of travel to get to that D key. There's a lot of, I'm kind of having to really kind of bend my hand in to get to that D. There's a lot of movement to get there, and when you actually get there, the key keeps going for quite a while. That opens quite a way to get the D to come out. So once you've pressed it, your hand, you can see there on the front side, my index finger is miles away from the B key because of the way that I've got to distort my hand to get that D to come down. There's also not much uniform to these palm keys, so once I've got the D down, it's actually quite awkward. Can I get a decent shot? Not really. It's quite awkward to get these other keys down. I'm really having to kind of mess my hand up, as it were, to find these three keys. The other thing is just to mention the feel of the saxophone. These the front keys on the left hand just feel awkward. They actually point out the wrong way when I'm holding the saxophone. The lay of them should be more like this, more here, so that when my hand is kind of ready to play, it's in a position where the keys are just underneath my fingers. But with this, you can see there that my wrist is kind of totally bent out of shape. But yeah, what the lay of this saxophone in terms of like just the way that the machine feels against my hand, I'm really having to bring my fingers round to sit onto this kind of mother of pearl lay on the keys here. Again, it's awkward for me to play this sax because it just doesn't feel right, if I'm totally truthful. And again, that's a big thing. If you do come to buy a saxophone, what does it feel like more than anything else on your fingers? Is there a lot of kind of awkwardness in putting the keys down? There's also a lot to be said for how far these keys are traveling. Sorry, I was going to call it a speaker key but it's what it's called on clarinet. The octave key there's quite a lot of travel in that. So again, as you're playing and moving between the octaves, you've got a lot of distance to get that down as you're playing. The same can be said for the right hand with regard to travelling to the keys. So this B flat key here that I have at the bottom is quite far away from my knuckle, You could hear, and the number of times that I messed up in that little example trying to play that Cannonball Adderley line, because it uses this side B flat key, and there's just so much travel to get away from these F, E and D keys to bring this down. And again, similar to the left hand, you can see how much travel I've got there, my fingers, in terms of how far away they're coming away from the keys to get this B flat to come down. Again, you could argue that I could bring it down like this, but then my fingers are totally distorted there. It's just, that's too far really to be traveling with your fingers. Again, as well, with the way that the instrument feels, these keys, I don't know whether you can see or whether it translates on video, the keys are gradually getting closer and closer to the saxophone. So this one is not too bad. It's still sat far too far away from my fingers, but then as we get lower and lower to the B flat, you know, they're coming further and further away. So the lay of the instrument just isn't very good, if I'm totally honest with you. And again, same with these keys around the front, they just don't feel right. I know that sounds like a bit of a weak explanation really, but you'll know yourself when you pick up a saxophone, it just doesn't feel like your fingers are sat naturally on the keys. I've got my fingers there on the front keys, and if you look at these palm keys, you can see that the D key is right where I need it to be. So I'm literally, to play that D key, I just need to roll my hand down ever so slightly. To add the D sharp, my finger's just there. It's literally kind of exactly where you would expect it to be, and you can see through here there that the third of these palm keys is right on point, exactly where you would expect it to be, and you're not opening your hands up or spraying your fingers out to try and get to a D that's kind of nowhere, you know, nowhere near where you need it to be. Again, to go back to what I was calling travel with the other saxophone video, here you can see that the octave key, there's not a lot in it. It doesn't need too much, and to be honest with you, with a little bit more, because that pad looks, that cork looks slightly worn, a little bit more padding on there, kind of there'd be very little to no, well, obviously some travel in there, not little to no, but you know what I mean. Okay, so the left hand kind of sits nicely, and the front keys, again, they just sit where you'd want them to be. It kind of feels right under your fingers, they're sat nicely. And pretty much the same goes with the left hand. I'm just dropping my thumb there to kind of show you the lay of these, but as I hold the saxophone in the way that I would if I was about to play it, you can see that the B flat key, again, it's not right under my finger, but if you think about it, if it was set out further, it would look ridiculous, to be honest with you. So that kind of, there's not a lot of travel, and my fingers, I can keep my fingers kind of near enough in contact with the mother of pearl on the other side, or the key on the other side, while I play that B flat key. And again, just with reference to what I mentioned on the other saxophone, you can see that that B flat key, compared to this top knuckle key, you can see there that it actually kind of comes back out a little bit. So you've got the top one, this central one is at the bottom end is sat back a little bit, but the B flat is there pronounced because I'm going to use it far more commonly than I am this center key. Again, on the front, everything is just where you would expect it to be. As a little note, I take the thumb rest off here because if the thumb rest were on, you can see that my hand is ever so slightly, my thumb is dropped down kind of out of its normal and natural position. So I take the thumb rest off just because it looks more natural and feels more natural, sat resting underneath here. So in conclusion, this saxophone is worth the extra money. That £60, £70 saxophone, to be honest with you, is completely useless. I think the only time I would ever use that is if I was on a gig, say a nightclub thing that was particularly close to people and I was nervous that beer or whatever, or someone might knock me. If there was a danger of that, I might take that sax out, but to be honest with you, it's kind of good for being hung on the wall, really. So yeah, this is the way to go. I'm not endorsed by Yanagisawa, by the way, so I have no reason to push their saxophones more. Just as a little kind of extra note as well with regard to your sax, don't put them down this way. I've just done that for this video, but you can see that there's a lot of strain here, and there can be a lot of strain on the D key as well, depending on how your saxophone sits. You can see here there's a lot of kind of what's the word here that I'm looking for? The way that it's designed with all these keys that kind of open up things in different places. they act as a guard if you lie it down the other way. So as much as it might seem quite unusual to do, lying it down with the keys facing down over is actually safer than the other way around.